Hello, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Zach Collins, and this is Financial Education. Today, I'll be going through a few different budgeting strategies that people use to make sure they keep on top of their income and expenses. We're currently living through a high inflation, and wages are really not keeping up. So this means it's very important to keep on top of your budget and make sure there's no shortfalls that then end up being covered with high interest debt, spiraling you more and more into debt over time. There are four very common debt strategies that people use, and I'll be going into them today. So they are the zero budget, pay yourself first, 20, 30, 50, and the envelope budget. So the zero budget and pay yourself first budget strategy are both very similar, but they approach the issue of savings from opposite sides. With the zero budget, basically you zero out your different allocations each pay cycle. For example, if you allocate $100 a week to food and you spent $90, that means you got $10 left over. If you allocate $50 to your phone and internet bills and you spend $49, there's a dollar left over. What happens with the savings? That's where the surplus goes. It's not a predetermined number, and so the amount you save each pay cycle would change based on how much you actually spent. Unless you're really good at following your budget for each spending category, the possibility of exceeding your budget any period is actually quite high. So you might underspend by, say, $5 in one category, but overspend by $50 in another, meaning net you're down by about $45. The type of person that would be drawn to something like this is someone that would want to be more disciplined with their savings and their spendings, but they also don't want to be too formal and limit their expenditure when something unexpected does come up they might want to spend their money on, such as tickets to a concert or travel. The pay yourself first approach, as I mentioned, is similar to the zero budget. The difference here is that you allocate to your savings first. You decide how much you want to save each pay cycle. This can be as low as a few dollars or can be as high as the majority of your income. The difference is that the second you receive your pay, you put that amount straight into savings and you never touch it again. With the amount you have left, then you stick to your regular budget. If there's any money left over, you can spend it however you want, as you already have that dedicated savings buffer. If there's not enough and it's still a few days away from your next pay, that's when you really have to look harder at what you're spending your money on, where and how to cut your expenses to make it to payday. I'll now move on to the envelope budget. So with the envelope budget strategy, there are two ways you can do it. One is with a number of bank accounts, and each with their own transaction account, debit card. It's a bit convoluted. Or you can use it with the namesake, a bunch of envelopes and cash. So I saw this budget go viral on TikTok a little while ago, and people talk about how brilliant it is. Look, honestly, it's been around for a long time. It's really not new. Possibly the concept of using cash for everyday expenses instead of mindlessly just tapping your card could have been what blew people's minds. Anyway, the envelope strategy is fairly straightforward. At the start of your pay cycle, you take out however much you need. You put that into an envelope titled for whatever type of expenses you're budgeting for. If you only want to spend $50 going out to eat, get the envelope, chuck in the 50. If you want 300 in groceries, $300 into that dedicated envelope. Similar to the pay yourself first budget, once your envelope is out of cash, it's out. There will be no more money allocated to that expense until the next payday. Before I move on to the final budget strategy, I do want to say, once you have run through your budget, it's really not the end of the world. Hopefully you've set aside some savings from your pay and can dig into that if an emergency does come up. Also, skipping meals to save money is really not healthy and probably be a detriment to your working career and earning an income. So it's best to make sure you don't stop eating for a week if you've run out of your allocated funds. If you do run out of money, then it's a good time to look at what you're actually buying. Are you buying takeout for lunch and dinner every day? Are you buying too many video games? Are you gambling, drinking, smoking? Whatever it is, ask yourself, does this expense need to be incurred? If you need to reduce your consumption or cut out completely in order to stay within your budget, that's where you need to make the sacrifice and decide, is this expense worth it for me? If yes, time to increase your budget. And you can either cut down on your savings, which would negatively impact future you, or you can see if you can reallocate from some other spending category. The final budget strategy is called the 50, 30, 20 budget. And this is a very common one that is talked about online with a lot of financial YouTubers and influencers. So why is it called 50, 30, 20? It's because 50% of your income goes towards your needs. This is stuff like rent or mortgage, groceries, petrol for your car, utilities, etc., etc. 30% goes towards your wants. Now, included in this 30% can actually be stuff that's already in your needs category, but maybe it's something you want to upgrade and get something a bit more luxury. You could buy a cheap car That would be a need if you have to travel for work or you can't get public transport. Getting a more expensive one, however, would be a want. So I personally would allocate the difference between what the two cars would cost into your wants basket. Other expenses that would come out of this 30% budget would be the stuff like going out for dinner or gym membership or travel. The final 20% is for savings. So saving can be short-term or long-term, and this can be kept in plain old cash in the bank. Nothing wrong with that. It could also be investments in managed funds, ETFs, or could be longer-term investments like super. Make sure to check out my other videos on the channel on these topics where I give a brief overview of how each of them work. In Australia, we're actually very lucky and that we get super guarantee. This is paid on top of our gross salaries. It's currently about 11% and it's a forced savings. I personally try to save on top of my SG, but I know that a lot of people in a lot of debt that would argue that it's better to cut your savings allocation and increase the other two. When it comes to budgets, there is no one size fits all. Everyone has a different spending habit, and the psychological nature of picking one over the other can vary so much between different people. And that can be the difference between keeping to a budget or not. And that's why it's important to try out all of them so that you can make which one works for you and which one doesn't. Hopefully I've been able to give you guys a better understanding and the premises behind how to budget and the different types of budgets out there, allowing you to pick one that works best for you. If you have any more questions, please feel free to drop a comment below and I will answer if I can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.